So Hollywood has been pretty risk-averse when it comes to making new IPs for their movies, instead relying pretty heavily on sequels and remakes, anything that's nostalgic and recognizable, because they think it's a safer bet to make money due to its already existing audience, as opposed to a new IP where they would have to build that audience from scratch. This has been a pretty mixed bag for Hollywood to say the least, with both major hits and major flops at the box office. Like for example Disney, who had a major flop with Snow White's remake, but a major hit with Lilo and Stitch, which ranked in over $1 billion, although most people agree it's not as good as the original. Regardless, these aren't the guaranteed money makers that Hollywood had been hoping for, but they're still so risk averse that they aren't really willing to do anything else. However, there are still very creative people working in Hollywood, and it seems like there's a building frustration among them. Like for example Genndy Tartakovsky, an animation veteran with a long and successful career, including shows like Samurai Jack, Dexter's Laboratory, and Primal. But despite his notoriety, even he's having trouble getting projects off the ground, which I have to admit is very surprising to me. But in late September, it was revealed that he'd been working on a movie called The Black Knight. Apparently Sony Animation has refused to greenlight the project because they worry that there isn't an audience for it, despite the interesting premise and the test animation being very promising. Apparently it takes place in the 14th century and follows a knight who controls a mech. The test animation shows him fighting a ninja. From what little we've seen, it does look like a really promising project. The test animation has so much atmosphere, and the animation is fluid and exciting. And it's pretty disappointing to know that someone with such a career as Genndy Tartakovsky would have this kind of trouble, with many people agreeing that it looks really cool and deserves a chance. But these big companies are so risk-averse they don't want to take any chances at all. And I understand it can be really intimidating to spend a lot of time and resources on something only for it to flop, but they're also passing up on really cool projects that seem like no-brainers. Really quick, before I continue, I do want to give a shout out to my upcoming comic book that we're planning on releasing very soon. It's called Shadow Paradox, about a man who's living in a post-apocalyptic wasteland that's been overrun by monsters, so he uses time travel to go back in time and hopefully stop this from ever happening. It's 78 pages long and it's fully colored. We've been working really hard on this project and we're really excited to share it with all of you. So if that sounds interesting to you, subscribe to the channel where we'll have frequent updates. But with that out of the way, let's get back to the video. This isn't the first time Hollywood has had little faith in a project. However, this kind of attitude has bitten them before. With K-pop Demon Hunters, another movie that Sony Animation initially had reservations about, causing it to be in development for roughly 7 years. And in the end, Sony didn't even release it in theaters. They instead gave it to Netflix, where they likely expected it would just be quietly released and then it would be left at that, only for it to become the biggest movie Netflix has ever seen. It was a critical and commercial success, and it found success off of Netflix too, with the soundtrack absolutely dominating the airwaves. The soundtrack has practically been inescapable, and that's true all over the world, not even just in the United States or Korea. Netflix even released the movie in theaters for a weekend, and it ended up being one of the most successful weekends a movie has ever had. It really can't be understated how popular and successful K-pop Demon Hunters is. And Sony Animation could have seen that success themselves, but they didn't believe in the project, so it went to another company. It's pretty obvious they're leaving money on the table, and if they refuse to see the potential in these projects, then they kinda have it coming. It does seem like audiences are clamoring for something new and fresh, but Hollywood just isn't really willing to deliver that, playing it so safe that they've become pretty boring. Take Disney for example, with their latest animated movie, Wish, which coincided with the company's 100-year anniversary, which could have been a true celebration of that 100-year history, and a fantastic addition to their library. I think that's what they were trying to do, but they played it so safe that saying that it falls short of expectations is a huge understatement. This movie was a major disappointment, and it had a real identity crisis. It felt like they were more focused on referencing other Disney properties, to the point where they forgot to just let Wish be its own thing. Like for example, Asha, the main character, has 7 friends, and each of those friends represents one of the 7 dwarves from Snow White. Except it was pretty obvious that there don't need to be 7 of these characters, causing major cast bloat. and most of them feel superfluous anyway. Honestly, I can't even remember most of their names. Instead, I just refer to them as their dwarf counterparts. And most of them don't have any depth or characterization beyond that reference. Like the one who's shy is shy because she's based off of bashful, and there's really nothing else to her character. It felt like Doc, Grumpy, and Sleepy were the only ones that really mattered, and the rest could have easily been cut. But here we are. It felt more like a nostalgia bait cash grab than anything else. But the sad thing is there are a lot of creative and passionate people who are still working at Disney, and we saw that with the development of Wish. But it seems like the corporate higher-ups got involved, and the meddling is what led to Wish's final state. But there were a lot of really cool concepts that were ultimately discarded when it came to the development of Wish. Wish went through multiple concepts, some of which have really stuck with people, to the point where artists are going out of their way to make fan art, fan animations, and even making their own versions of the story, which is something the theatrical release of the movie just wasn't able to capture in people. Some of those concepts included the main villain actually being part of a power couple, with Queen Amaya also being a part of her husband's villainous plans, but in the final release it was changed to where she was an ally of Asha's. Another concept that really resonated with people was Starboy, a shapeshifter who went through multiple concepts. In one early draft, he was going to be the ghost of Asha's dead grandfather, and in another draft, he was going to be her love interest. Starboy really caught on with people, especially the version of him that was supposed to be a love interest. And I think it's a huge missed opportunity for Disney to not include that. They basically could have had their own version of Jack Frost from Rise of the Guardians, which despite Rise of the Guardians coming out over 10 years ago, Jack Frost still has a pretty big fan base. But Disney missed out on both a villain power couple and the super cool love interest for Asha. It has felt like Disney has been shying away from romance in the last decade, not including one ever since Frozen back in 2013, which I did a video on a few months ago, because Disney used to get a lot of pushback about their romantic subplots, but now it feels like they're listening to their critics instead of their creatives, and it really didn't work out for them in Wish's case. And it really didn't work out for Sony Animation, where they bummed off K-pop Demon Hunters to another company, and then watched as it became the most popular movie that company ever had. And given Tartakovsky's history, you'd think that these companies would be going to him with budgets, asking him what he has ready for them, instead of him having to struggle against the companies to get his projects greenlit. It's just kind of a sad state of affairs, and one that I do hope that they correct soon. It's no wonder so many artists are going independent, and avoiding all the bureaucracy that comes with these big companies. It's either that or spend like half a decade in developmental hell, only to be told no. I definitely wish Tartakovsky the best, and I hope we get to see the Black Knight someday. It looks really cool. So those are my thoughts on the whole Black Knight situation. What do you guys think about all of this? Do you think Hollywood's playing it too safe? Do you think Sony Animation will learn anything from K-pop Demon Hunters? Let me know in the comments below, I'd love to hear from you. Before I go, I want to give a shout out to our members, Tyrant Carnivore, Shiny Orc Boy, Depth Charge Media, Samaru163, Gabby Hime, Verdant Range, JVR, Equestron, Norman Sweet Cream, Way Beyond Coincidence, Hunter Rose, 80s Nostalgia Guy, Felix Spam, J Draws, Meowsers, Sky, Philip, Isaac Martinez, Garcia XV Legend, Tobias Weller, Bandito Bane, Mac B909, Dakari the Professor, Omni Fair, J Calvary, Strider Exile, Phil C, Killer Bomb, Slawa Saporiguez, Entwine Boot 301, Frankie Camarillo, Crimson Phantom, Jin the Goblin, Daunter, G-Rock, Lucas Geist, Papa Hud 69, and the Gengar King. Thank you all so much for the support, and if you would like to become a member, you can hit the join button next to the subscribe button. We also have Buy Me Coffee if you want to support us that way. And if you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and that part's free. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.